¿A dónde está papi?
Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Monday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Monday. Certainly better than mine, I hope. Sorry for a couple of technical difficulties, but we got it. Um, Good evening. Happy Monday. It is indeed Monday. It looks like Florida's getting a hurricane. The center of Florida, yes. The center of Florida is within the cone of whatever. How's it going, Echo Resto Dragon? Howdy, howdy. My sister-in-law is in Florida, in Naples. Oof. That might be a rough spot there. Even up here, we're gonna experience rain, probably. Rain and thunderstorms. Alio with the 10 biddies and the tier 1 sub 23 months. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, the eye of the storm. Sorry, I meant like the cone of influence or whatever. The cone of whatever the heck. You know how like they show you the little cone and you're like either in it or not? Yeah, that's what I was referencing. I'm having a shit Monday with my government playing foreign exchange roulette. I don't know what that means or what that's in reference to. Like, is that like an immigration thing? It has been quite a day at work today. So, we'll see how much we can get through before I have to go. The GB pound got down to 1 to the US. All right, folks. Let's get the show started. No, I know it's British money. All right, I think we're good to start. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're okay. Work today has been absolutely horrible. Food for thought, folks. If you plan to go into a place that's about to close, and you know it's about to close, do the employees a favor and don't. The same goes for like calling a call center that you know is about to close. Do yourself a favor and don't. The GBP has lost 25% of its value in less than a year. Sheesh. I believe the world's economics have suffered since COVID. It still has not ended. That's true. This is a global phenomenon. Yes, that is true. That is true. All right, folks, we got to start. So today, unfortunately, I saw that Christian nationalism was trending on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, well, that's nice. That's good to hear. And here's what I found. tweet from Marjorie Taylor Greene. First of all, the fact that like Christian nationalism is trending on Twitter is not a good thing. MAGA, America First, Christian nationalism, faith, family, and freedom. None of these things are the same. Okay. Sourcing. I prefer Zoroastrian nationalism. Jesus. All these are euphemisms for these three things are euphemisms for far right fascistic ideology. That's what these three things mean. Nothing to do with faith, other than, I guess, faith. Like, the definition of faith is like accepting things blindly, because that's the only way like fascistic ideologies take hold. Family has nothing to do with any of these things, and freedom certainly has nothing to do with any of these things. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. These are all the terms the lying left has tried to label as bad. I've never seen like a strong left-wing movement to think pointing out that freedom is bad, nor like family. The family, faith, and freedom are the words anyone adds value meaning to these from DG and her way or methods only. No, it's not just her. No, it's the Republican Party. Yeah, MAGA, America First, and Christian nationalism is objectively bad and scary. Yeah. Yeah, all these things are euphemisms for these far-right elements. So yeah, they're bad. They're failing and people are not stupid. We are winning. I don't know in what sense of the word you are, but okay. I never get tired of winning, ever. And I never back down. Yeah, this is the same person who continues to perpetuate election fraud conspiracy theories. Yeah. I forget, did she even win her primary? Okay, this person is just going off. Anywho, the point is this is a massive red flag. This is a massive red flag. And let me just kind of piggyback off this. To kind of like cement this idea that these people like are 100% comfortable with like fascistic or fascist ideology. MTG did win her GA primary. Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense. If Herschel Walker's up a couple points, it makes sense that they would vote for somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene. This kind of just further cements this idea, this argument that these people are that the Republican Party is completely comfortable with fascistic elements, if not outright fascist elements. So, as we know, or as you may have known recently, a far right politician won the prime minister, I want to say. And she's basically like the remnants of Mussolini's like fascist, movement. So that's good. And of course, Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Ted Cruz are celebrating this. Because at the end of the day, these people are fundamentally authoritarian. I've been making this argument for a while now, and I will continue to make this argument, and I will continue to put forth example after example after example, point by point by point, that these people are way, way too comfortable with fascism. And it's not just a fringe element, it is mainstream in the Republican Party. How do I get... Oh, here. House and Senate Republicans aligned with former President Trump are hailing the emergence of the first Italian fascist leader since the Second World War as a sign that the world is embracing Mr. Trump's brand of authoritarianism and a harbinger of a GOP victory in November's midterms. Election returns show that far-right leader Giorgia Meloni and her Fratelli d'Italia, or Brothers of Italy, which should immediately spark some red flags there, emerged from a snap parliamentary election with a plurality of seats, touched off a wave of celebration among far-right elements of the Republican Party. Again, like this puts it in the perspective that it's like some elements, but in reality, these far-right, like fascistic elements are pretty much the mainstream. Many of whom also pointed a recent victory by far-right parties in Swedish as evidence that the GOP's brand of strongman populism, it's just fascism, folks, is increasingly en vogue. Colorado GOP representative Lauren Boebert took to Twitter to suggest that recent European election results show the entire world is beginning to understand the woke left does nothing but destroy. She added, November 8th is coming soon, and the U.S. will fix our House and Senate. Her colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, also hailed Miss Meloni's win over the weekend, although she misspelled the Italian leader's name, of course, in a tweet offering congratulations. Congratulations to Giorgia Meloni and the people of Italy. Senate Republicans also celebrated the far-right victory and pledged to work with Miss Meloni's incoming government. Of course! Why not? These authoritarian, fascistic fucks like each other. Of course. GOP Senator Ted Cruz called the results spectacular and posted a video of Meloni's victory speech to Twitter. Of course. His colleague Tom Cotton, of course. The usual suspects, chat. The usual suspects. Tom Cotton of Arkansas also said the Senate GOP would be standing by to assist Miss Meloni, whose political party traces its roots to the fascist Italian movement founded by late dictator Benito Mussolini. Nice. Congratulations to Giorgia Meloni and the winners of the Italian elections. We look forward to working with her and other Italian leaders to advance our shared interests. Yeah, the shared interest is fascism. Nice. Nice. Cool. The thing I hate about politics is no one talks about anything in depth. It's all just slogans. I'm not sure what that has to do with what I'm talking about. Italy is broke and going to be interesting to where they will try to get the money for their political projects and plans. I have no idea, but nonetheless, it's quite worrisome. It is quite worrisome. Like, the point I'm trying to make is that the Republican Party is completely fine and normal with fascism. That's what I'm trying to point out. That the Republican Party is okay with fascism. That's it. That's my point. I mean that far right elements are really good at slogans. Yes, I suppose. The mafia never went away in Italy. I mean, right now that's not the issue. Right now it's the fascists. But my point is that the Republican Party is 100% comfortable with fascism. That's my point. The Republican lawmakers face condemnation for cheering on the Italian results. Yes. This month, Sweden voted for a right-wing government. Now Italy voted for a strong right-wing government. The word is fascist. The word is fascist. The entire world is beginning to understand that the woke left does nothing but destroy. November 8th is coming, and the U.S. will fix our House and Senate. Yeah. This is This is what will happen if Republicans are allowed to continue to win elections. That's my point. I think the issue is that the extremists are willing to adopt authoritarian measures, and Republicans have extremists leading the party. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Yeah. 100%. 100%. And like that's the connect here, because obviously I'm not very well versed in Italian politics or whatnot. Nor is that the point. Sourcing just kind of basically hit it right there. That's exactly it right there. They know their ideas aren't popular, so they're destroying democracy. Right, but yeah, I don't think they believe in it, period. I think democracy is just it's just in their way. That's the problem. That's the issue. Democracy is like something that's in their way, because they're fundamentally authoritarian fucks. So that's why they don't like it. Apart from, obviously their ideas not being so popular, so they really have no choice. All right, let's see if we can find that video. Unless Ted Cruz... Oh, here we are. How popular is MTG's tweet? I don't know, and not really interested. That's not the point. Her tweet is 14k likes, 3,052 retweets. That particular tweet in question. Geez, I studied Italian and Russian for a hobby. Guess I'll need it to detect fascism now. Oh no. It's pretty overt, my friend. It's pretty out there. There's nothing ambiguous about the suggestions or about the goals here. It's very, 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 very out there. Not obvious. What's the word I'm looking for when it's in your face? Oh man, what's that word? Not on the nose. It's like when something's like right there in your face. On the nose is something like when you're trying to think about it and you're like, oh yeah, overt. There we go. There, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. There we go. Yeah, I wanted to use obvious, but like that's not really the word I wanted to use. It was overt. It was overt. So to take a step back, Michael Hassler, yeah, it's overt. There's nothing hidden about the message here. I mean, what else are we supposed to take from, quote, MAGA, America First, and Christian nationalism, faith and family and freedom? These are things that the lying left has tried to label as bad. Yeah, I think these things are bad. Like, and these first three things have nothing to do with these last three things. It's how you inject fascism. That's how it works. Are you an MTG? No, I barely dodged her. Not to say too much info, but I barely dodged her, and I'm whoo. Phew. Maybe MTG should work for Italy. True. If she likes it, if she likes that idea so much, maybe she should just go to Italy. See how she likes it up there. Anyways, this should terrify you. Here we go. This is about what we are doing here today. Why is the family an enemy? That's a straw man. Okay. There's a single answer to all these questions. Because it defines us. Because it is our identity. Our identity is family? What? Alio with the 10 biddies. Thank you so much. Because everything that defines us is now an enemy? What? For those who would like us to no longer have an identity and to simply make perfect consumer slaves. Uh-oh. Yikes. I'm getting some, I'm getting some Forza Italia 1920s, 1930s vibe. So they attack national identity? The fuck does that mean? They attacked religious identity? What? You mean religion? They attacked gender identity? What? How would you attack gender identity? That's what you're doing though. What? They attack family identity? No, that's what you're doing. That's exactly what you're doing. Every accusation is a confession to these people. I swear to God, it literally never fails. They're the ones who are attacking the identity of the family. A family can be two women, fostering a child. That's a family. But you don't believe that that's a family. In fact, you think it's degenerate or whatever. You're the one that's doing an attack on the family if that's the case. They're on to us. Yep, I see that. I can't define myself as an Italian Christian. I can't define myself as an Italian. What are you talking about? You're an Italian citizen by definition. Okay. A Christian? Nobody's telling you can't be Christian, bro. Are you for real? Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Is there anybody in Italy that can confirm that you can no longer be a Christian in Italy? Is that like news? Is that something that's actually a thing in Italy where you can't identify, where you can't define yourself? But like, that's kind of weird that you would define yourself, you would define your identity as like a religious movement. That's kind of cringe. Not a cult, by the way. What are you talking about? No one's telling you that you can't be Christian. Okay, like unless I missed something really huge, to my knowledge, in Italy, you can be a Christian. As far as I know, unless there's some weird stuff that went on and I'm not aware of. But in the context of the United States, since Ted Cruz is a sitting senator and he's the one signal boosting this, he's the one retweeting in support of this message. I'm going to have to transpose this in the context of American politics, or I'm going to transpose this in the context of America and the society we have here. Unironically, no one has ever said that you aren't American. You're a citizen, so therefore you are American. I don't even know what that even means. No one has said in this country that you can't be Christian. You just can't force your bullshit on other people. No one has said that you can't identify as a woman. That's the whole lefty. Actually, that's the left's argument. You're making the left's argument in that context. No one said that you cannot identify as a woman. You can't define yourself as a woman. If you say you're a woman, if that's what you define yourself as, right? Or you identify as, you're making that you're making our argument. Mother, also something that literally, unironically, nobody has said that you can't. What are you talking about? You can't define yourself as a mother. Like, do you have a child? Or are you, like, do you have a child? What? But my religion requires me to force it on others, so you won't let me practice my identity. Checkmate, lib. True. I didn't think about that one. You got me. I didn't think about that one.
Italiana, cristiana, donna, madre, no. Io devo essere cittadino X, genere
I must
X.
be citizen X? No. Nobody has said that. Gender X? Nobody has said that. I don't even know what this is. Parent 1 or parent 2? Nobody has said that. I literally have never heard this in my life.
Genitore 1, genitore 2, devo essere un numero.
I must be a number. What are you talking about? Because when I'm only a number, when I no longer have an identity or roots, what are you talking about? You're literally calling yourself an Italian. And a woman. And a mother. Yes. You are these things. So what? What's the problem here?
Sarò solamente un numero quando non avrò.
Like, does this not sound like the most absurd argument? She's making zero sense here. It's incoherent.
Più un'identità, quando non avrò più radici, beh, allora sarò lo schiavo perfetto.
Oh, wait, hold on. We're getting to it. I see where this is going. I'm sorry. I see where... You know what? I'm sorry. I apologize. I know where this is going because of all the... All this is leading to you being the perfect... Like, Jesus Christ. The victim mentality complex on this person. Of course, she's a fascist, so... Yeah. That I will be perfect, the perfect slave at the mercy of financial speculators. And there it is, folks. There it is. There it is. It's you know, it always comes back. It always comes back to our favorite boogeyman, right? It always comes back. These people literally never have any other ideas. It's the same thing. It's the same garbage over and over again. Yep, here we go. It's financial speculators, which is a dog whistle. I can hear it from like 1,000 miles away.
Finanziari, il consumatore perfetto. E questa è la ragione per la quale oggi noi facciamo tanta paura. Questa è la ragione per la quale oggi questo appuntamento fa tanta paura.
Oh, yeah. That's why you inspire so much fear. Never mind your authoritarian tendencies. No, never mind that. It's whatever BS like perceived culture war bullshit. That's what frightens people. Yeah.
Perché noi non vogliamo essere dei numeri, noi siamo qui per dire che noi non siamo dei numeri, noi difenderemo il valore della persona umana.
We do want we want to defend the value of a human being. Press X to doubt. You're a fascist. Nah.
Di singola persona umana, perché ognuno di noi ha un codice genetico unico e irripetibile. E questo, piaccia o no, ha del sacro. Lo difenderemo Dio, la patria e la famiglia, che fanno tanto schifo a qualcuno.
We will defend God and country. Yep.
Per difendere la nostra libertà, perché noi non siamo...
That has nothing to do with freedom. And again, here's the financial speculator dog whistle.
Saremo mai schiavi e semplici consumatori in balia della speculazione finanziaria. Ecco la nostra missione, ecco perché oggi sono venuta qui. Scriveva Chesterton ormai più di un secolo fa, vediamo se ve lo trovo. Fuochi verranno attizzati per dimostrare che 2 più 2 fa 4. Spade verranno sguainate per dimostrare che le foglie sono verdi in estate.
No idea what this is
Quel
about.
tempo è arrivato, signori. Siamo pronti. Grazie.
Is that like a thinly veiled threat? What the fuck? Jesus Christ. Anyways, I think the point was sufficiently made. We will not be slaves at the we will not be made slaves at the hands of financial speculators or whatever. Yeah, this person's a fascist. And more to the point, Ted Cruz is out here signal boosting her, and what she was, what she was saying here is essentially Christian nationalism, so, which I assume is why all of this kind of stuff is trending. And we've got like politicians, we've got senators and members of the House completely embracing this kind of stuff. This is mainstream in the Republican Party. This is the Republican Party. And this is what Ted Cruz signal boosted. This is Italy's new prime minister. I've never heard any politician so perfectly explain what we're up against. The financial speculators. Which is, I mean, I don't know about you, but that dog whistle, oof, it's right here. Ooh, it's in my brain. Swords will be drawn. I don't think it's veiled at all. You're right. The financial speculator line is for the people who loosely recognize the Eurozone economic issue. Oh yeah, she's right. The finance people are bad. I'll vote for her. Yeah, I guess. It just kind of touched my my JQ my JQ radar just went off. Because like it would have been different maybe if she's talking about like the way the EU is set up and the way the Eurozone economic issues are going on, because like that is a little bit more, you can be a tiny bit more charitable, but she left it a little bit open, so that's my JQ radar just went boop 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 boop. It serves both. Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I heard it 1,000 miles away. I'm like, oh no. The financial speculators. We will not be slaves to financial speculators. I'm like, oh Lord, that's yikes. That's whew. Hans Rito, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Anyways, yeah, when you watch this video, you'll quickly realize why the establishment is afraid of her. And of course, this guy's like nothing to do with it. This guy isn't Italian, from what I understand here. He's from Virginia, I think. Wait, before I make any, he's from Florida, right? What are you talking about? Senior digital strategist at a company from Florida, talking about how this Italian fascist giving the reason as to why who's the establishment? Who is the establishment? Unless that's we're layering in our JQ dog whistles here. Yeah, we're layering here our JQ dog whistles. If somebody calls it out, then she can just point to real issues. But otherwise, it's a message that hits with the both. That hits with both the Nazis and the normies. Yeah. I mean, it has to be done. It had to have been done that way because, like, man, yikes. Maybe I've been doing this for a very long time. But the moment she said that, I was like, oh man. Let me decode this for you. The establishment equals people we don't like. No, in this case, I think giving credence to this makes me think that this dude understood. This guy got the assignment, all right? This guy heard it, and he's like, yes. End of the world is 94% scary right now. I don't know if America made Italy change. No, we have nothing to do with that. We have nothing to do with that. I mean, what can we do? we have no bearing on what happens with Italy. My only commentary, or why that's even the only reason I'm even bringing any of this up, just to be clear, because like I'm not familiar enough with Italian politics to make good analysis or good critique, right? But it is very, very, very telling that somebody who speaks in this way, that got elected to the prime minister of Italy, effectively, she won her election or whatever, however they run things over there. She won the prime minister position. She is clearly a very ultra nationalist, fascistic person. And then we've got mainstream Republicans from here, from the United States, completely backing this message. Completely okay with this. Supportive of this message. That's where this whole thing is circling to. Mussolini's granddaughter's on the Rome City Council. No way. What? Mussolini's granddaughter is on Rome City Council? Oh, wait. I think I heard this in the Majority Report earlier today. Yeah. Okay, wait. Yeah, I heard this earlier today. Oh my god. Yikes. Does she follow Benito's philosophy? Yes, she does. Like grandpappy, like granddaughter. She is a politician for the far-right Brothers of Italy, the same party that this fascist person won. She's in the same... she's in the same party. Oh my god. Since, funny enough, 2016, and is an active member of the party. Oh, sorry. Here. Yeah, she belongs to the same party. So, Jesus Christ. Anyways, that's not the point. Yeah, people like Lauren Boebert, Ted Cruz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tom Cotton, all these people are completely supportive of this type of messaging, and it is incredibly worrying. That's my point. Oh yeah, she's part of this far right party. Yeah. I don't know what their version of Dems are, but they have different parties. And I think they have more left wing parties than the Democratic Party. That's for sure. So yeah, I would give more deference to the more left wing parties than I would to a more Democratic aligned party. And by Democratic, I mean like the American Democratic Party, if that makes sense. I mean, like this should be ringing all kinds of alarm bells. This should be very, very disconcerting to people. It is to me. It is to me that we have like mainstream politicians supporting people like that, supporting messages like that, supporting messaging like that, unironically. So that should be incredibly disconcerting. I mean, like, how are they compared to, like, the American Democratic Party? Are they, like, similar? Because if not, I'm pretty sure there's, like, more left-wing parties in Italy, in which case I would support them. Speaking of garbage opposition, Sinema in a speech at McConnell Center says 60-vote Senate threshold should be restored. Senator Kirsten Sinema on Monday said the Senate should reinstate the 60-vote threshold for all judicial and executive branch nominees. Sinema made the comments during a Q&A session following a speech at the McConnell Center at the University of Louisville. The Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell introduced the Arizona moderate at the event. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Not only am I committed to the 60-vote threshold, I have an incredibly unpopular view. I actually think we should restore the 60-vote threshold for the area in which it has been eliminated already. We should restore it. Yes. To the cheers of course, attendees. Because, you know. Just FYI, the Sunday Political Show talked about this. Gotcha. Does this mean she just got some voter poll info that shows ours not taking the House back or keeping the Senate? If so, she wants to C-block some more Dem votes? I don't know. The projection for a Democratic win in the House doesn't look that good. So I don't know where she would get this from. It is more likely that the Democratic Party holds on to the Senate and maybe pick up a seat. But the House looks less likely. That's what I think. I mean, unless, you know, who knows? We'll see. At the end of the day, it is still, you know, very much moving towards like a coin flip. But nonetheless, it seems like the House is favored to go to the Republicans. The Senate is favored to stick with the Democratic Party. Yeah, she just needs more cover. She wants more cover, true. Someone needs to ask her why she hasn't had a town hall since 2018. Yeah, well, if she actually spoke to her constituents. I don't think she's at an event being introduced by McConnell to speak with her constituents. Not everyone likes that. Haha, continues to laugh. Because it would make it harder for us to confirm judges and would make it harder to us confirm executive appointments in each administration. But I believe that if we restore it, we would see more of that middle ground. Ah, yes. Yes. Unbelievable. A flawless freaking logic deployed here by Kirsten Sinema. Flawless logic. Because when we continue to capitulate, to the far right, when we continue to capitulate with the Republican Party, which has basically become synonymous, or at least comfortable enough with these far right elements, when we capitulate with that, certainly they're going to want to reciprocate that, right? Certainly, like this is delusional. This is delusional because she gets bad publicity. Good. She doesn't. I mean, she's not doing anything good. If she's not doing anything good, then she'll get bad publicity. If she does good things, she'll get good publicity. Like, this isn't like a hard concept. We would see more of that middle ground in all parts of our governance, which is what I believe our forefathers intended. Yes, the good old forefathers. Nice. Did the forefathers also intend to have like filibusters, or was that kind of like after the fact? Pretty sure like the forefathers also wouldn't want her in the Senate. Pretty sure the forefathers like made it so that people like her wouldn't be in the Senate, so I don't know what she's like talking about. They wanted robust debate than decisive action, right? So that they can say they talked about it and then like didn't do anything about it and be like, yep, sorry, we can't do anything. The 60-vote threshold for non-Supreme Court judicial nominations in executive branch was ended when Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and the Senate Democrats invoked the so-called nuclear option. In 2013, McConnell and Republicans went a step further and did so for the Supreme Court nominees in 2017 during the confirmation process of Neil Gorsuch. Sinema pointed to the volatility of the House, specifically in the frequency to which both chambers flipped control as part of why the filibuster should remain in place. It's likely to change again in just a few weeks. While it is frustrating as a member of the minority in the House Senate, and equally as frustrating in the majority because you must have 60 votes to move forward, and that frustration represents solely the short-term angst of not getting what you want. Yeah, but then you end up doing fuck all. And that's the point, right? And ultimately, that's the point. In 1 hour, DART will hit the asteroid. Yeah, I heard about that. Very interesting stuff. We shouldn't get everything we want in the moment because later, upon cooler reflection, you'll realize that it was probably gone too far. Wait, what? What? What is this logic? This is wild. This is wild. This is clown world logic. We shouldn't get anything we want in the moment. Like, she's acting as if like these are children acting on impulses. She's like describing like, is that what politics is? Is that what politics is? You act like you act like an impulsive child? Is that what she thinks is going on here? This is wild. The Senate is where democracy goes to die, true. Thanks, Kirsten Sinema, for being a part of that. Really helpful. Well, who knows? We might get to see the end of that. Cosmic seeking, cooler affection, also known as corporate donations. Maybe. I don't know what going too far means. Like, what is going too far? Can you give an example? Like, what does going too far mean? I unironically don't know what that means. Going too far meaning like, I don't know, giving people healthcare? What? Listen, listen, okay? We can't do a universal healthcare system because we shouldn't get everything we want in the moment. I know that we're the party in power right now. I know. I know we're the party in power and I know that we're supposed to govern. But you know what? Folks, we shouldn't get everything we want in the moment because later upon cooler reflection, we'll realize that we pissed off we have gone too far. We've gone too far. And 3 Republicans admitted we can't give people what they want because then it will be always. Then it will be always. I mean, yeah, well, that's the point of government, right? Well, let me rephrase that. That's the point of a representative democracy, is when your representatives are representing you. If they're not doing what you want, then what are they there for? Sinema's remark comes 9 months after she declined to jump on board with President Biden and Senate Democrats in a push to overturn legislative filibuster to deal with voting rights. Right, like, this is going too far, folks. This is going too far. In her mind. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oi! Oh, come on. Here we go. Sinema's remarks comes 9 months after she declined to jump on board with President Biden and Senate Democrats in order to, in a push to overturn the legislative filibuster to deal with voting rights. The Arizona Democrat also staked out a similar stance in 2019, having told Politico that she wanted to restore the Senate's supermajority. While the remarks are not new, the timing is notable. They come only 3 months after the Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe, right? Which is based on this idea, right? Like, okay, whatever. They also come amid the Democratic stretch to run to keep hold of the party's Senate majority and potentially break the current 50-50 split. Sinema is also staring down a likely primary challenge in 2024, potentially by Representative Ruben Gallego, as the progressive wing of the party has grown increasingly frustrated with her in recent years. Good. They should primary her. Yeah, but this is the Democrats saying this, Alio. This is her saying this. And her reasoning of why she wouldn't support cementing like voting rights and things like that would be because we shouldn't get everything we want. This is strictly a her problem. I'm not advocating for giving up. I'm pointing out like the problems with the Democratic Party, in particular with her. And like as the voters, we voted for the Democratic Party for very specific reasons, right? If these people cannot deliver, then why are they running? If these people cannot deliver, then what is the point of them being there? Primary her so she can flip to the R side where she belongs. Yeah, no, I don't think she'll flip to the R side. I just wanted her to get primaried and get out of there. On top of her refusal to nix the legislative filibuster in January, and you best believe that the Republican Party has absolutely no problems carving out filibuster exceptions. If the Republican Party manages to get both the House, the Senate, and the presidency in 2024, do you think something like a filibuster is going to stop them? No way. It didn't stop them from making sure they could speed run judicial nominations. It didn't stop them from carving out exceptions for the Supreme Court, particularly because McConnell knew what was coming. So make no mistake, the Republican Party will not have these problems. Guaranteed. The Republican Party is not going to sit around and say, yeah, well, I support the 60 threshold and I support... No, they're not going to be stopped by that. Sinema declined to support the original BBB, of course. Of course. Before Senator Manchin that he could not back it. Sinema ended up voting for the Inflation Reduction Act in August. Yeah, because it basically was as watered down as it got. Because of this exact same logic. Because of this exact same garbage logic. Right here. Filibuster changes are simple majority rule change vote. The entire thing is a farce. They could change it every month. Congress is in session if they wanted to. Yeah, 100%. It's BS. Yeah, I agree with you. A nationwide abortion ban is coming. I believe that if the Republicans win the House and win the Senate, and in 2024, the wins from the House, and if they win the House and the Senate, and that kind of catapults momentum for them to win the 2024 presidential election, yeah, I think that would be in the cards. I think that would be in the cards, and like something like a filibuster is not going to stop them, because they don't care. They don't care. If it's not Mitch McConnell, the next majority leader, if it's the Republicans, will just simply carve out an exception and do it. That's it. The procedural BS like that is not a problem for the Republican Party. They don't care. They will do what they can. They will do whatever it is that they need to do to get what they want. That's it. We have to see what the voters and voter departments do. Well, yeah, I mean, you're talking about the midterms, yeah, but I think it's safe to say that at this point in time, it's left up to a coin flip, effectively. Power does what it wants. Well, yeah. Groups seeking voter anomalies 2 years after Trump's loss raised concerns ahead of the midterms elections. A few months ago, Catherine Teskey said that two women showed up at her door in Spokane, Washington, with a clipboard listing the names and information of everybody in the house and using an aggressive tone. They said that they were from something along the lines of Spokane County Voter Integrity Board, which is immediately should raise a red flag. She recalled the June 5th visit, noting that the women pointed to a Spokane County logo on their clipboard, and they said, "We're checking into, quote, voters to make sure that there's no fraudulent voting, because that's how you do investigations." I felt insulted, Teskey said. "I felt like we weren't being trusted and we couldn't figure out why. Like, what about us made us suspicious voters? Nothing. These are probably clowns, as we will find out." She said that she reached out to her local election officials to ask if they had sent staff to her door. The officials responded, "No, that definitely was not anybody within our office." The canvassers at Teskey's door came amid a massive volunteer door-knocking effort organized by Washington Voter Research Project, a conservative group that believes it has found anomalies on the state voter rolls since the 2020 election, despite multiple election audits by county, state, and federal officials. They continue to push this garbage. They lost like 50 to 60 legal voter cases, but still pushing this voter fraud. At this point, the fraud is the people still pushing voter fraud issues. Yeah, of course. This has been beaten into the ground over and over again. There's no evidence to suggest that there was a massive coordinated effort to overturn the 2020 election. It didn't happen, okay? It wasn't the Democrats. It wasn't Smartmatic, the Minion. It wasn't like dead foreign leaders. None of that happened, okay? If there was voter or election fraud, it was from the Republican Party trying to shoehorn literal fake electors to overturn the will of the people, or the election, I should say. It was the Republican Party repeatedly being under investigation. Republican operatives on behalf of Trump and his lawyers or whatever. All these like tangential people, all of these people are the ones who would be involved in any in any capacity. The only possible issue in elections is election fraud. We know what happened there, specifically in Arizona. Yep. Right. To the extent that there was like voter fraud, like, I mean, it's like 0.001% or whatever. And usually like we'll hear stories about people getting caught, and it's like the overwhelming majority of them are just Republicans trying to test the system. Yeah. It just can't scale because voters are individuals. True. Glenn Morgan, a conservative activist in the state, said he founded the organization last year with the goal of cleaning up Washington's voter rolls. We have about 350 volunteers in the state. He estimated the group has knocked on more than 20,000 doors since 21. While he shies away from talking about the validity of the 2020 election, his organization is one of the several conservative canvassing groups that emerged across the country following then President Trump's re-election defeat and lies about the widespread voter fraud. There are many who still believe with no evidence that the 2020 election was stolen, said Jonathan Diaz, a senior legal counselor for voting rights at the Campaign Legal Center. And so they're trying to take matters into their own hands and go into the communities that they suspect of having perpetuated that fraud. And in doing so, are intimidating and harassing members of those communities and discouraging them from voting in future elections. In nearly 2 years since Trump lost the 2020 election, groups searching out election fraud have reportedly been knocking on voter doors in at least 11 states: Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Utah, and Washington, raising concern among civil rights watchdogs and some election officials and even the Department of Justice. With the 2022 midterms around the corner, voting rights activists like Diaz worried that canvassers knocking on doors, asking intrusive questions, and suggesting there could be issues with people's voter registration or ballots could confuse voters or even intimidate them enough to stay home on Election Day. It's not worth committing fraud. The risk isn't worth the reward. True. And yet, we hear the handful of stories that happen every election. Election officials in Washington state say that they have received calls and written complaints about canvassers. These complaints allege in part that some canvassers have become indignant when they didn't get the answers or access they wanted, and some canvassers are asking intrusive questions like whom residents voted for. The Washington Voter Research Project maintains that these claims have no basis in fact. Press exited out on that one. But the election audits, Trump lost votes and Biden won. Yeah, there's no doubt about it that the 2020 election was, Biden won. And fraud was on Trump's side only. Well, what we know indicates that, the investigations and evidence seem to suggest, allegedly, that Donald Trump, or at least people tangential to him, his campaign people or whatnot, Republicans also coordinating, allegedly to shoehorn these fake electors. Yes. In Colorado, canvassing efforts by a group named the U.S. Election Integrity Plan have prompted a federal lawsuit from a coalition of organizers, including the Colorado, Montana, Wyoming State Area Conference of the NAACP. The lawsuit alleges canvassers are targeting communities experiencing high growth of minority voters, deploying armed agents to knock on doors, and accusing residents of casting allegedly fraudulent ballots. Jessica Hayes, an attorney representing the U.S. Election Integrity Plan, called the allegations frivolous and without merit, arguing that plaintiffs in the case have not identified a single voter who was intimidated by the by a U.S. EIP volunteer. Similarly, plaintiffs have not identified any instance where a U.S. EIP volunteer was armed during canvassing efforts. The House Committee on Oversight and Reform also launched an investigation into partisan investigations by Otero County, New Mexico, into the 2020 election. Yeah, allegedly. Which included an audit force that went door-to-door canvassing voters. House Oversight Committee Chairwoman Carolyn Maloney and Representative Jamie Raskin said in a statement that the efforts illegally interfere with Americans' right to vote by spreading disinformation about elections and intimidating voters. The Washington's Democratic Secretary of State Steve Hobbs is raising concerns about the canvassing effort there as well. This is part of a greater threat on our elections, on our very democracy, he told NBC News. We saw what happened on January 6th in our nation's capital. It happened here in our own state capital, where you had people questioning the election. When you go door-to-door like this and put out a false narrative, in some cases lies, you erode the integrity of elections. Morgan said there's nothing dangerous about what his group is doing. The goal is to make sure that we help the auditors, he said, referring to, but like if these are officials, then let them do their freaking job. And if they continue to find no evidence to suggest that there's any shenanigans going on, then just simply F off. Simple as that. Simple as that. The problem with these people, though, is that they have the potential to create a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. They believe that there's doubt over the electoral process to the point where they interfere and become involved in the process, volunteering and overseeing, applying for jobs, going door to door, to the point where their incompetency and malpractice actually creates the electoral anomalies, upon which they will, of course, respond with, I told you so. Yeah, that's a dangerous part of this. Yes, I think that there's definitely truth to that, and I think fundamentally we should be aware of this. That's a problem. That's a super big problem. Morgan says there's nothing dangerous about what his group is doing. The goal is to make sure that we help the auditors. He said, referring to county auditors who are responsible for running elections in the state. So like what my grandma used to do is walk around her precinct with the League of Women Voters, and they would just check to see that voters were at, but this is not that, my friend. And furthermore, like, context, grandma, to make sure that when, women were registered, because, I don't know, I would need further context as to what this is. What? What? The League of Women Voters is just a voter advocacy group. All they do is try to get people registered to vote and, fight for voter laws that are good, improving elections. Here they have a thing for fighting for reproductive freedom. equality to be part of the Constitution. Yeah, like these people just want to get as many people to vote. So it is not the same. Not even by a long shot. Not even close. Not even close. Not even close. Hello from Ukraine. How's it going? Howdy, howdy. I think the League of Voters used to organize debates before cable TV. What? That's pretty cool. Anyways, point is, this is very dangerous stuff, and the 2022 elections are, are incredibly crucial in the sense that they're definitely going to be testing grounds, for whatever shenanigans the Republican Party has planned for the 2024 election. Mean, you know where is Ukraine? Do I know where Ukraine is on a map? Kind of. All right. Most Democrats say ditch Biden as a nominee in post-ABC poll. A majority of U.S. Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents want the party to replace Biden in the 2020 as its 2024 nominee. Just 35% of this group prefer Biden for the nomination, while 56 say the Democratic Party should pick someone else, according to the poll released on Sunday. Among Republicans and I don't care what these people... What? Okay. Among Republicans and Republican-leaning independents, 47% back former President Trump for the 2024 nominee, and 46% prefer somebody else. In a head-to-head matchup, the survey found that Biden and Trump essentially tie. Oh, man. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. They need a better candidate. If we're like neck to neck with Donald Trump, that's not in a statistical tie. That's not good enough. Essentially tied Biden edged Trump by 2 percentage points, 48 to 46 among registered voters, and the number is reversed to give Trump a 2-point advantage. Democrats' preference for a candidate other than Biden at the top of the ticket in 2024 was also evident in a July survey by the New York Times and Siena College. In that poll, nearly 2/3 of Democratic respondents, 64%, said they would prefer a different candidate. Of that group, a third cited Biden's age as a reason for the preference. At 79, Biden is the oldest president in U.S. history. Biden said in an interview with this month with 60 Minutes that he'll decide whether to run for re-election after the November midterm, which will determine whether his party maintains the House and Senate majorities. Bro. You're backpedaling, my dude. My guy. My brother in Christ. You said that you were supposed to be a one-term president. It's much too early to make that kind of decision. But he said that he would run for one term. As soon as he announces he's not running, he becomes a lame duck. I guess, but he originally said that he was supposed to be a one-term president. That's my point. It's much too early to make that kind of decision. Okay. What I'm doing is my job, and I'm going to do that job within a time frame that makes sense after this election cycle. Here, going into the next year, make a judgment on what to do. What are you talking about? The Washington Post survey puts Biden's overall approval rating at 39%, with disapproval at 53%. On his handling of the economy, approval was at 36%, disapproval was at 57%. Looking to midterms, 47% of registered voters polled would cast their House district for a Republican and 46% for a Democrat, about the same results in April. The poll was conducted between September 18 and 21 on a random national sample of 1,006 U.S. adults, including 908 registered voters, with a margin of error plus or minus 3 percentage points. Yeah. This is not good. This is not good at all. All right, folks, we've got I think this is worth taking a look. Putting up a different candidate is a bad idea. If Biden cannot win, we won't keep the White House anyways. You think so? You think it would just be, I guess, for lack of a better word, strategic. Okay, but it's just bad strategy to go through a nomination process? Maybe. But, like, by the same token, if we're not going to win, you know, the White House anyways, wouldn't it be, like, wouldn't it be better to, like, play, you know, roll the dice with somebody different? It would show that the party would be weak. Also, not sure who you could get that would be any better. Yeah, I mean, like that. Well, to be fair, the Democratic roster isn't exactly impressive. That is true. That is true. If Biden's approval rating was in the teens, sure, but he has an incumbent advantage. Maybe.
In the middle.
Ah, Jesus.
In the middle of a record-breaking heat wave back in August, Twitter was tearing Taylor Swift to shreds. She wasn't in the news because of a song she wrote or some dress she wore. No, she was getting dragged because of her private jet emissions.
Taylor Swift has been rated the biggest celebrity CO2 polluter of the year so far.
The sustainability research group Yard had just released a report on the celebrities with the largest flight-related carbon footprint, and Taylor Swift topped the charts at #1. Whether
he'll be primaried, yeah, but I don't think that. I assume that what sourcing is saying. I'm assuming what sourcing is saying that they're just not going to bother with the primary process. Also, the polls are a preference. It's preference for him to step down doesn't imply anything else. True. I guess it could be interpreted as like the Democratic Party wants somebody else. The question being like who, and then follow-up question, how like much of a national like pool do they have to vote for that person, right?
The jet out or using it herself, Swift's private plane made 170 trips in just 7 months, pouring an estimated 8,293 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent into the atmosphere. Needless to say, those who cared about climate action were not happy. This was yet another example of the world's richest people disproportionately driving climate change. But as I sat there scrolling through tweet after tweet shaming Taylor Swift for her huge carbon footprint,
Yeah, I prefer someone else in theory, but not sure who someone else. Not sure someone else would be better. Well, yeah, like I at the end of the day, like I'm not sure who in the Democratic Party roster would be able to A, primary, and B, then win the general election. Yeah, no, I would not. No, I would not want Pete Buttigieg. Yeah, I don't know.
I couldn't help but feel like something was a little off. And so I began to do some research. This is what I found. This is the story of inequality and how the rich really drive climate change. Why we shouldn't actually care that much about Taylor Swift's personal carbon footprint, why this guy is far worse, and how this might show us a better way to think about carbon inequality. This video was made possible by CuriosityStream and Nebula. If you don't know by now, I have over 20 extended editions and bonus videos that can be found only on the creator-made streaming platform Nebula, like my exclusive video on why direct air capture is capitalism's biggest gamble, or the one I just made all about the barons of industry making millions killing our planet, and much, much more. You can see all of them on Nebula by signing up for the CuriosityStream Nebula bundle at curiositystream.com/OCC or using the link in the description below.
I mean, yeah, I was about to say, like, also, I don't know if Pete Buttigieg has name recognition. How about Warnock? Maybe, but I don't know if Warnock is known as a national figure. I think Warnock's politics, I think, would be preferential. But I don't know if he would win a general election. Name recognition is important. We have to remember the presidential elections are also primarily a personality contest. Yes, that is true.
The current narrative around inequality and climate change looks a lot like the findings of an Oxfam report on household income and emissions. The report found that the richest 1% emit double that of the poorest 50%.
Well,
And
that's a good
newspaper
point,
headlines like
Simulacra.
this and this perpetuate this narrative that the consumption habits of the rich are driving climate change. I even made a short video about the outsized impact of rich people's emissions footprint, because this is a glaring problem. The rich across the globe are consuming resources and churning through fossil fuels at a rate way higher than their fair share. But the frameworks of studies like this and headlines like this often narrow in on the carbon footprint of the individual as the crux of the problem. These studies argue that the rich are doing damage to the environment because of how many steaks they eat and how many extra homes they own. These are certainly excessive and harmful to the environment, but the recent crucifying of Taylor Swift's flight log made me feel like we might be missing the mark a little bit. Under this carbon footprint shaming model, there seems to be little nuance between what Taylor Swift does and, say, what the CEO of ExxonMobil, Darren Woods, does. Indeed, a carbon footprint analysis would show us that Taylor Swift's impact is probably larger than that of Darren Woods's. This seems not only wrong, but implies that the climate—
Wait, yeah, how would an individual, like, rich singer that travels by private jet it would be more responsible for a carbon footprint than the actual CEO of ExxonMobil? That wouldn't make sense on its face. I'm still not convinced that Biden's numbers are in any way anomalously bad to warrant major action. To be honest, given the economic climate, they're actually going surprisingly well. Obviously, it's a question of 2024, not 2022, but also why we can't really say anything with certainty. Well, that's a point. That's a good point. It's possible for someone else to do it, like Obama, but I'm not sure it's possible right now, given the current issues around their current being an incumbent. You can't attack the incumbent because it is your party leader. Well, I certainly hope they do everything possible to give us to give us some W's to manifest that in the midterms.
Climate crisis is driven primarily by consumption. In this view of the problem, the solution would just require the CEO of ExxonMobil and all rich people at the helms of polluting industry to just stop eating steak and flying as much. In short, when we talk about economic inequality and emissions, we too often focus in on the connection between unequal consumption habits leading to unequal emissions. A lens that's only solution is a politics of less. One where decreasing personal consumption, traveling less, and having less is the only way to avoid climate chaos. For the ultra-rich, a contraction of wealth definitely needs to happen. But for the working class who are living paycheck to paycheck, this solution is unappealing and unrealistic. It also conveniently avoids the root cause of the climate crisis. All of this is not to say that looking at inequality is useless. Just the opposite. Inequality is an essential concept for tackling the climate crisis. We just have to move our analysis away from unequal consumption to that of unequal control of production. In the fall of 2003, a camera crew took to the streets of London to ask people about their carbon footprint.
How much carbon I produce? Is that it?
19 years ago, people hardly knew what a carbon footprint was, let alone how much they were
the
emitting.
concept of
But
carbon
thanks to this
footprint
commercial,
was like kind of like I don't know how to describe it other than like a psyop by like the fossil fuel companies. I think the weird thing for Democrats would be that if Biden did step down, most people would assume Harris would lead the charge, and yet she's been broadly unremarkable. True. Yeah, I agree. Harris would be annihilated. I'm just pointing out, I don't really have a dog in this fight. To be honest, I'm just pointing out the potential strategic reasons why Biden and C would want to keep him on the ballot. Yeah, okay, I see. Well, that makes sense. From that perspective.
Ad campaign that ran throughout the early 2000s alongside it, the carbon footprint has become one of the main vectors through which we view the climate crisis. And the masterminds behind this campaign was none other than BP. This oil giant orchestrated a multi-million-dollar ad blitz in order to popularize the idea of the carbon footprint and place the responsibility for climate change onto the individual consumer.
Yep.
The way we commonly talk about inequality and emissions is no mistake. The fossil fuel industry has spent decades making it seem like our individual consumption habits are causing the climate crisis. A recent analysis of ExxonMobil's internal and external documents found that the company not only downplayed the climate crisis throughout the last 20 years, but also consistently framed it as a consumer demand problem rather than a fossil fuel supply problem, ultimately individualizing responsibility. In part, this is why we're so focused on the damage caused by a rich person's flight log, rather than how they got the money to pay for that private jet in the first place. This needs to change.
Reckless DC spending worsened inflation that stimulated checks to criminals like the Boston Marathon bomber. Senator Raphael Warnock and DC liberals voted to allow almost $1 billion to go to the criminals. Tell him to stop the reckless spending to stop inflation.
There's one issue where Herschel Walker actually makes his position clear.
There's not a national ban on abortion right now, and I think that's a problem.
Walker's for banning abortion,
True.
even in cases of rape, incest, or to protect the mother's life.
When we talk about inequality and climate change, we need to zoom out and understand that this is not just a question of who has money and who doesn't and what they do with it, but a question of class. How the unequal ownership of production breeds environmental degradation. In other words, when we talk about inequality in relation to emissions, we need to focus on who controls and profits off of polluting industries. Because for each flight taken or car driven,
It's kind of weird seeing America from the outside just now because it's a little upside down in comparison to the past 2 decades. Right now, a lot of Americans are looking inward. I think it's all effed up. We got to change. Whereas a lot of the rest of the world is kind of thinking, well, it's going bad, but at least America's there ticking over. That's the case with the economy and flooding to the dollar, as well as geopolitics and the war in Ukraine. Sheesh.
there is an airline or fuel company and a host of executives gaining profit from our choices. In the words of Matt Huber, author of Climate Change as Class War, if we really want to understand a rich person's contribution to climate change, we shouldn't just look at their consumption. We should ask how they became rich in the first place. And when we start to look at inequality through that lens of who profits off of and who controls what's being produced and how it's being produced, we begin to see that there are just a few rich people actually driving the climate crisis. 11 people dressed in suits walk into a conference room in Switzerland. They sit down and begin to decide the fate of the world. This might sound like an overstatement, but these 11 individuals steer the largest private building materials company in the world, Holcim Limited. This company's main business is cement, a highly polluting good whose 2020 production, as Holcim admits in their annual sustainability report, put 156.3 million metric tons of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. That's almost 19,000 times what Taylor Swift emitted during her flights this year, or 0.45% of all carbon emitted in 2020. 10 members of Holcim's board and its CEO Jan Jenisch control a company that's responsible for 0.45% of all global carbon emissions. This is the inequality that is wrecking our atmosphere and driving the climate crisis. Not only are these 11 people building their wealth from a corporation that is actively driving climate change, they also hold the power to drastically cut emissions within their company, and yet they've barely done so. According to the latest IPCC report, industrial production emissions account for 34% of all global emissions, the most of any sector.
Yep. And there's no incentive to do so because, well, as long as record profits keep happening, as long as there's, shareholders to keep happy, so it continues. That's the problem. I'm not hearing anything from the DNC lately about changing Biden, but it's 2020. But 2024 is a year and a half away. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
And just a few capitalists control and profit from the industrial corporations driving these emissions. If we rounded up all the board members making decisions in the cement sector, for example, that would roughly be 6,710 people. The decisions they make about how their corporations are run and what they produce have tremendous ramifications for the rest of us. They decide what we can choose. In the words of Matt Huber, what rich people do at home or in their car or in their private jet pales in comparison to the exploitation of labor and the wrecking of the earth that generates the money they enjoy. Unfortunately, the few who own the factories, the mills, the foundries, and wells where fossil fuels and all other materials for our built environments get made are ultimately beholden to profit. So, when we choose commodities, we can only choose those that are profitable to produce in the first place. Under capitalism, the rich few who decide what gets produced will always decide based on what will ultimately generate them profit.
True.
Sometimes this means cutting emissions and waste, but most of the time, it does not. Let's go back to Darren Woods, the CEO of ExxonMobil, for a moment. He, alongside his fellow capitalists steering the oil industry, have had a disastrous impact on the natural world. One often cited analysis traced 71% of all industrial production emissions to just 100 fossil.
Yeah, but the problem is you're still that may be the case, but it's not as much profit as destroying the planet, so it's not happening.
Fossil fuel companies. The boards and owners of these companies, without a doubt, have immense and unequal control over our global emissions and our choice of energy. If they decided to transform their production from one of fossil fuels to that of renewables tomorrow, our global emissions would drop dramatically. But it's not just their own production that they hold sway over. The rich who own the means of production also have the power to sway the political realm. Look no further than the Republican Party of the United States. During the 2020 election year, industrial polluters like Koch Industries and Chevron put $63.2 million directly into the hands of Republicans and spent a total of $139 million influencing elections across the country. So not only do the barons of industry control what is produced, they have immense influence on what policies governments enforce around the world. While capitalists profit off of their destructive production choices, the people selling their labor power to those capitalists to survive, aka the working class, face the brunt of these companies' destruction in the form of wage exploitation and workplace pollution that seeps out into communities and the environment. Unlike the rich who have the luxury of shielding themselves from the worst of the climate change they've caused, the working class often live in communities hit hardest by these crises. They exist in what a working paper from the UN calls a vicious cycle of inequality, wherein initial inequality increases people's exposure to climate hazards like droughts or hurricanes, as well as increases the potential damage that those disasters could cause. And once a disaster has passed, this inequality decreases the ability of those who have been exploited to adequately recover from those disasters, making them even more vulnerable to the next crisis. Essentially, the centuries of dispossession of the working class at the hands of capitalists means they are especially vulnerable to the threats of climate change. That UN working paper notes something interesting, however. Citing a community's resilience in Bangladesh because of their access to a nearby communal mangrove forest, the authors write that Common property resources shared by the community can be an important part of a coping and recovery strategy of the climate-affected people. So the more control communities have over resources and the points of production, the more resilient they are in the face of climate change. So not only does the concentration of control of production in the hands of the few lead to unsustainable practices, but it hamstrings our ability to be resilient in the face of disaster. But unfortunately, environmental policymakers seem to ignore that climate chaos is rooted in the unequal possession of production concentrated in the hands of the few. In November of 2018, the famous Parisian Champs-Élysées turned into a hellscape. Burning cars set the night aflame as protesters wearing yellow vests clashed against heavily armed riot police. This was the beginning of the Yellow Vest protests that rocked France for months. These protests are a perfect example of why environmental action needs to address class inequality. Sparked by Emmanuel Macron's environmental proposal of raising the gasoline tax, millions of working-class French folk took to the streets. Their reason was quite simple. The fuel tax was yet another proposed policy that disproportionately burdened people who were barely making ends meet. In the words of one of the Yellow Vest protesters, while the elites are talking about the end of the world, we are talking about the end of the month. So even though Macron was trying to create action that might reduce emissions, it did so in a way that demanded the working class consume less, while capitalists who own the fossil fuel companies and car production facilities that are actually driving emissions got away relatively unscathed. Macron's fuel tax fell into the carbon footprint trap. It tried to change people's choices at the point of consumption rather than addressing the few rich folks who make choices for millions at the point of production. We will never build
that is a
power
fascinating
and create change
perspective,
by telling someone
actually.
who's living paycheck to paycheck to pay more for gas or give up driving to work. What's interesting is that the Yellow Vests are a collection of...
That's actually a very fascinating perspective. And I think it's something... to consider.
People across the political spectrum. They reveal that class can be a powerful tool of solidarity, but they also demonstrate that solutions to climate change that focus on individual consumption are unpopular and not effective because they disproportionately hurt the wallets of the working class. The politics of the gas tax and of the carbon footprint are ultimately a politics of less for the masses. In order to truly dismantle the power of the rich, to reverse their environmental impact, we need a politics of more. We need to establish democratic control of the means of production. Addressing the point of production is ultimately a politics of more for the masses. Unlike a punitive gas tax, when we recognize that full worker and community control of production means better working and living conditions for all, we might actually draw people in. As Matt Huber writes, class politics is a powerful dot connector. It aims to tie the threads together to make clear that our movements face a common
Maple Leaf Dragon, how's it going?
Class, and that our struggles seek common goals based on our common humanity, dignity, freedom, and a livable planet. When we begin to frame the climate crisis as the result of not how many flights Taylor Swift goes on, but instead who controls and profits off of what fuel and what planes are being produced, then we can begin to create lasting change. This is exactly what union organizer Tony Mazzocchi found during his years agitating for change in the US. Mazzocchi was one of the first labor leaders in the United States to build strong ties to the environmental movement in the 1960s. And it began with his realization, as his biographer writes, that pollution always starts in the workplace and then moves to the community and natural environment.
I had to do a stupid
Mazzocchi
training
knew that
today.
Pollution originates from the point of production. So if he could organize and convince his fellow laborers to stop toxic chemical seepage and dangerous emissions from ever being created, they wouldn't need to clean up their rivers and air after the fact. So Mazzocchi toured the country throughout the late 1960s. He brought scientists to local union meetings who explained the dangers of the chemicals the workers were handling, and asked union members to pressure their bosses and elected officials for change. By 1970, the political pressure from unions was enough for President Nixon to sign the Occupational Safety and Health Act into law, a piece of legislation that required companies to clean up toxic workplace hazards and provide a safe working environment for laborers. Mazzocchi shows the success of recognizing that environmental struggles are class struggles and vice versa. He shows that pressuring the capitalist class through strikes, protests, and walkouts at the point of production is a very tangible path towards transforming that production and cutting emissions. While the people who own and profit off of the means of production have outsized power, that power is dwarfed in comparison to the collective power of the workers who actually produce those goods. So what does all this mean we should do? It might mean going into the trades and joining a union. It might mean building worker power, organizing in your community, writing letters to newspapers, or connecting with and agitating in your workplace. But it can also start small. It can start with an idea. Maybe the next time you hear someone talk about a celebrity's carbon footprint, you take the time to consider that the people who are profiting off that consumption might be more at fault.
True.
But who are the people behind these industries? I've mentioned a couple CEOs throughout this video, but there are certainly more barons of industry making a killing our planet, which is why I made a whole separate video detailing the captains of industry driving the climate crisis. You can find that video and 20 other extended and bonus OCC videos that are not on YouTube over on Nebula. If you don't know by now, a group of educational creators on YouTube teamed up to create a streaming service called Nebula that is home to a ton of ad-free, exclusive content like a bunch of extended videos and interviews from me, as well as original videos from other creators like Not Just Bikes, who has a Nebula exclusive video for all you suburb haters out there about how hard it is to buy milk in suburbia without a car. Nebula allows me and Not Just Bikes to flex our creative muscles without having to worry about ad revenue or the dreaded YouTube algorithm. It's a platform made by creators for creators. Instead of the fluctuation.
All right. Recycling industry is a new extraction industry. Yeah. We need to change our disposable economy into a sustainable one. Yeah. Well, yeah. We need products that use, we need products that use little energy from cradle to grave, not items that need to be bought every few years. Yeah, you're talking about planned obsolescence. I agree. Yeah, planned obsolescence. In effect, the exact opposite of what capitalism wants, because it's not very profitable. Yep. Yep. So the question I would ask in this regard, though, is: would the decisions of a business be different if made under a collective rather than a few individuals? Not in terms of wages or conditions, but in terms of output and pollution and consumption. A business who makes beef burgers, for example, still wants to make beef burgers. I'm not sure how the environmental impact comes into that question when workers will, as he identified, think about the next month, not the next 60 months. Well, it's a different playing field when you have like the workers, at the reins of the means of production. That is a completely different playing field. Furthermore, I think what the idea would be is that they're more in tune with, they're more in touch with what happens around their community that will influence the changes necessary for them to change what that factory that they collectively own will output. Does that make sense? So, if I understand his argument correctly, putting more power into the workers' hands, workers who are obviously members of the community who understand, who live there, and especially workers who are, educated like that union leader did, and educate them with scientists and whatnot, would change their mind about what they output and how, more importantly, how they output whatever they're producing, right? And people who think about the next month, not the next 60, like fundamentally would be, well, the situation now. It wouldn't be the same if it was, owned by the workers. Well, my issue is more, and staying on the burger example, as it's easier, people would stop eating burgers now, for the environment. Just like they could stop buying new mobile phones every 2 years, but they choose to do that, then say it's the company's fault for the emissions created by supplying that demand. Yes, but also, the companies are also effectively, artificially creating this too, right? You've got like cell phones that will essentially go obsolete on purpose, quickly. They will create cell phones that have different dongles and whatever, different USB outputs and whatnot, so you can't use the same charger. They'll make new cell phones, and then the old ones get too slow. Like this is just like this, this thought process of consumerism, right? This culture of consumerism is the issue here. That's being perpetuated by the capitalists because they want more, right? That's it. No sane worker will sell their factory to another country for more money because they would sell their job in local economy for the future of minor short-term profits. Easy for one person to do this, harder for the whole town that depends on a company to do so. Yeah, but it's like, it's the same thing. Like, yeah, while people could technically stop eating burgers, I guess, if you want to use that example, it's just like this continued bombardment that this is, you need this. You need this. I'm waiting for the Tesla cell phone. It'll probably last for 10 years. And I think you give Tesla way too much credit. I don't think so. I don't think so. Either way, the point is, yeah, we're basically sold this consumerist like state of mind, right? That we don't, I mean, you're right. We technically don't need a new cell phone every 2 years. We technically don't. But we are driven to that. And like, if we're talking about a consumer society, then you have to influence, well, the consumer by influencing the choices that they have. That's simple. You influence the consumer by influencing the choices that they have, which is what I think is also a tangent to what he was saying. My LG phone has lasted 6.5 years out of necessity. Nice. All phones should last that and more. When did the Samsung S8 come out? Samsung Galaxy S8 release date? (2017). The Samsung S8 was the phone that I had before I got the S21. The S21 as a gift. So, yeah, 2017. So that's about 5 years. It's about 5 years. Yeah, 2017. Yeah, I think you're right, sourcing. So now to just kind of, now that we've set, I guess, the stage, let's take a look at this one. What many progressives misunderstand about fighting climate change. Yes, please, tell me, Alex, stop, tell me. Since the 60s, fighting for the environment has frequently meant fighting against corporations. Yeah, usually, among other things, but yeah. To curb pollution, activists have worked to thwart new oil drilling, coal-fired plants, fracking, and fuel pipelines. But today, Americans face a climate challenge that can't be solved by just saying no again and again. What are you talking about? It never stopped. That's the problem. Decarbonizing the economy will require an unprecedented amount of new energy investment. Fossil fuel infrastructure built over centuries needs to be replaced within the next few decades by clean energy alternatives. The U.S. will need to build hundreds of thousands of square miles of wind and solar farms, deploy enough battery storage to keep the power flowing through the grid even on calm, cloudy days, and at least double the country's transmission line capacity. And the same laws that environment groups leveraged in the past to block or delay fossil fuel projects are now being exploited by the NIMBYs in ways, however well-intended, will slow the country's transition to clean energy. Windmills off Cape Cod, a geothermal facility in Nevada, and what could have been the largest solar farm in America have all been blocked by endless series of environmental reviews and lawsuits. I mean, yeah, depending on how you do these things. I'm just a bit skeptical of it, and it's not because I don't want to believe it, but it's more because I need to see an action before I say that's it, that's the answer. This is a debate that has been going on within environmental economics for a long time, probably since the start. I'm definitely more in the camp of personal responsibility than a lot of people on the left. I think, but I view it as a double thing. It's both personal and a business government. Yeah, but you'll never be the same. You'll never be able to compare yourself to like a mega corporation doing like X to the umpteenth power more damage than you are as an individual. You as an individual have choices. Yes, that is true. You as an individual have choices, and I would advocate for people to do the choices within their power, but most often it's not. Most often it's not. That's like, yeah, like you have to take personal responsibility. You shouldn't buy X, Y, or Z, but like, what if that's the only thing available? We're in a consumerist environment, right? The problem here is, well, instead of just like focusing on like the individual, because the individual, yes, may have choices, that's true. And you should try to do what you can, right? But not everybody can. So give people better choices. How about that? Give people better choices. Like, you can't just shove it off as uniquely like an individualistic problem, because it just can't be solved at the individualistic level. Not by itself. Not by itself. Not by itself. You, as an individual, can do certain things. Absolutely. And you, as an individual, could even go a step further and attempt to influence other people to do better choices. Sure, and you should do that. In fact, that is one of our prerogatives, I think. It is imperative that we do that. But it will never be anything in comparison to like the massive corporations and the fact that they continue to destroy the planet for profit and continue to skew the rules in their favor so that they can continue to do so for the sake of profit. Because I basically advocate that people use their agency as individuals. Yes, it's all you can do. Do what you can within the means that you have to make a difference, because a lot of problems stay as problems because people think that it's one person can't do it. Right, but some things are some things are it's in some situations that is the case. One person technically can't do, can't make a difference. Not by a long shot. Not me here. But if I can, take better choices, if I can advocate for people to take better choices, then that's all I can do. But that's not essentially going to stop ExxonMobil, right? Because a lot of problems that stay as problems because people think it's one person can't do it, and if everyone thinks like that, then indeed it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Individuals make groups, and groups make change. Yeah, but if the only things that you have are as options because you have this like economic system that has monopolized this, essentially monopolized. What choices do you have? You have the choice of driving a gasoline car or buying an electric. Can you afford an electric car? I can't. What about public transportation? How good is that? What choices are we given? We need, like, I would say that instead of just solely putting it on the individual, it's not that simple. Or I should say, it's not fair. I have an older appliance. One day, a $2 pot will break, and I will need a new one. They don't make the parts anymore, or the parts that are good for the fraction of the price in a new one. They don't make much money on spare parts, and they want to break, so I will buy a new one. Right, and like, what do you do at that point? What do you do at that point? You have to buy a new one. Essentially, we're being boxed in to only have like, well, there's slightly, then, I mean, we could do this, but eventually it'll box you in. Buying a new electric car is generally worse than continuing to drive your old car. I think that's from Adam Ruins Everything. There might be something to that. I'm not sure. If you have the choice and you absolutely need a new car, meaning that you have no choice, your car is done, you have no mode of transportation, public transportation is not an option, then yeah, probably an electric car would be better. If you can afford it, which is another problem. So like, what do we do there? What do we do there? All right, so yeah, the good news is that with reasonable reforms, energy transition is fully within reach. Private investment in clean energy is skyrocketing. And even big oil is starting to realize that there's no future in fossil fuels. That's not true at all. No, they're still making record profits. They're not going away. Not by a long shot. They're gonna milk this until the last second, and by then it's already, too late. But this may not be enough for some environmentalists. Jamie Henn, an environmental activist and director of Fossil Free Media, recently told Rolling Stone that, look, I want to get carbon out of the atmosphere, but this is an opportunity to remake our society. If we just perpetuate the same harms in a clean energy economy, it would just be a world of Exxon and Elon Musk. And oh man, what a nightmare. True. Many progressive commentators similarly believe that countering climate change requires a fundamental reordering of the West, political and economic systems. I mean, like, yeah, kind of. That's, I mean, what are we supposed to do? Continue? The level of disruption required to keep us at a temperature anywhere below absolutely catastrophic is fundamental, on a deep structural level, incompatible with the status quo. I believe that's true. I believe the status quo, by definition, is keeping things the same. Status quo, the existing state of affairs, especially regarding social or political issues. Right. So, continuing this existing state of affairs, especially regarding social or political issues, is incompatible to fixing or at least moving in the direction of solving this problem. Yes, that's a big problem. Stubborn status quo has to go for a sustainable future, and no one wants to hear that. Yeah, well, it's uncomfortable, but unfortunately, given the time constraints that we have, I don't think we have that. I don't think we have that much of a choice. The writer Phil McDuff has argued the climate crisis. The Green New Deal advocate Naomi Klein has insisted it could be the best argument progressives has ever had to roll back corporate influence. Which, yeah, it's a problem. Tear up free trade deals and reinvest public service and infrastructure. Also things that need to be done. Such comments raise a question. What is the real goal here? Stopping climate change, or abolishing capitalism? Taking climate change seriously as a global emergency requires an all-hands-on-deck attitude. That's true. And a recognition that technological solutions, yes, often built and deployed by private firms, can deliver real progress on decarbonization before the proletariat has seized the means of production. What? They're actually memeing on this idea. This is actually insane, and this is the reason why we're not getting there in time. This kind of like mockery and like condescension is exactly why we're not going to get there in time. Yeah, we need an all hands on deck attitude because there needs to be fundamental changes that need to be done, and we can't just rely on this future technological solution that we keep getting promised when we already have a lot of sufficient, at least, technological advances that would help us. And moreover, like, these type of things need to be deployed now. These, solar, wind, geothermal in certain areas, hydroelectric in certain areas, depending on how you do it. All these things are things that we've done for quite a while. We know that this technology works, and it's relatively cheap and can be deployed relatively quickly, I guess, for the lack of a better word. Things that can be done now. And yet, we're being told, in a very facetious manner that, well, the capitalists will deliver real progress even before the proletariat sees the means of production. It's condescending. And quite frankly, not helpful. A massive infusion of private investment made not for charity, but in the anticipation of future profits is precisely what needed to accelerate the clean energy transition, which, like all revolutions, will yield unpredictable results. which is a problem, dude. That's the problem. The belief that top-down decision makers can choreograph precisely how the clean energy revolution will proceed runs deep in progressive circles. The manifesto describing his version of the Green New Deal, Bernie Sanders, oh, here we go, declared that to get our goal of 100% sustainable energy, we will not rely on false solutions like nuclear, geoengineering, and carbon capture and sequestration or trash incinerators. Trash incinerators generate a lot of fossil fuels. Carbon capture and sequestration is not at the level necessary, nor is it to be used as an excuse to not hit the source of the problem, which is the emissions too, right? Many environmental groups share Vermont Standard's aversion to these technologies, but the climate emergency demands that we take a closer look at some of them before writing them off completely. Nobody's saying, the only reason we're saying you need to write these off, or I guess whatever straw man he wants to build here, it's because we don't have time. That's what it is. We don't have time to stack up, carbon capture and put it to the point where it's usable right now. We don't have that. Trash incinerators, what are you talking about? This makes a lot of this makes a lot of emissions. Why would we do this? Australia's carbon capture pilot program is failing miserably. It is like 10 times more expensive than they thought it was. Right. Imagine if Doug Brandon took Jimmy Carter's solar panels out of the basement and put them back on the whole White House. That would be cool. Not rely on is not the same as write-off. Oh, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. That's a very good point. This person is super dishonest. Holy shit. It just keeps getting worse, folks. It just keeps getting worse. Thank you for pointing that out. It's so important. Media literacy, folks. Media literacy is so important. This is wow. Thank you for pointing that out. He didn't say writing them off completely. He said not rely on. And again, furthermore, the problem is that we're not here with the carbon capture technology. We're not there yet. Geoengineering is disastrous and shouldn't be tampered with. Nuclear, the problem with nuclear is that it will take too long and it's expensive. That's it. Like that's my issue, is that it trying to build a whole bunch of new nuclear plants it'll take a lot longer, and it's cheaper to just do renewables, green renewables. Because our primitive imaginations always go back to default. Trash, go away, let's burn it. Yeah, which makes emissions. In the face of uncertainty about the best path to decarbonization, policymakers should think like a venture capitalist. No, they shouldn't. No, we shouldn't. Policymakers should be thinking about doing the most amount of good for the most amount of people, not like a venture capitalist. This is actually insane. Placing lots of bets in the expectation that some technologies will fail. No, we know what works. But the investment portfolio will succeed as a whole. The false solutions that Sanders decries may indeed prove unworkable. Yeah, we know that. We just got an example right here. We just got an example that Australia's carbon capture pilot program is failing miserably and costs 10 times more. We're not there yet. We don't have the time to figure out and play around with these things. That's the issue. Nuclear energy might never be cost competitive, which is what I was saying. I literally just said it's too expensive, and geoengineer may actually prove technically infeasible. Also, no legitimate, reasonable person in the field of climate science has suggested this as like a full-on like good idea. But we can't know in advance. Well, we do know what works now. What are you talking about? Venture capitalist is a fancy speak for con man. Liquid fuel nuclear reactors can be up and running under 3 years, consume existing nuclear waste, and reactors can be manufactured in the factories and shipped out elsewhere to where we need them. Yeah, I think that, like, in some circumstances, we might be able to use that type of technology, Maple Leaf. But yeah, most of my quarrels with nuclear is, like, I mean, he admits it right here. It will never be cost competitive, especially with, like, renewables, like solar and wind. But I suppose that there are circumstances where you can use them. Environmental activists have historically been skeptical of nuclear energy, but that attitude may be changing. California reversed its decision to shut down the Diablo Canyon plant, and Japan, yeah, because the alternative would be coal. What? The alternative would be coal. And yeah, no shit. If I had the choice of, like, of opening up or firing up coal-fired plants, or natural gas or fossil fuels versus nuclear, I'm going to choose nuclear, especially if there's one already built. Why would I want to shut down? Why would I want to shut down existing nuclear plants in favor of fossil fuels? That makes no sense. And Japan announced its plan to start investing in nuclear energy again, an outcome few predicted after Fukushima. This is welcome news, considering that per unit of electricity produced, nuclear causes fewer deaths than wind and energy and creates fewer... I don't know about that. And creates fewer carbon emissions than solar, and concerns about waste are overblown. I don't know. I don't know. Once the solar panels, I think the concern with solar is, like, the initial cost up front, but I think that once you get them going, it's pretty smooth sailing. However, one major barrier to deployment remains. Unlike solar and wind, which have dramatic cost decrease, nuclear power construction costs have actually increased over time. Although that means the current generation of nuclear technology isn't likely to be a major climate tool, advanced nuclear systems such as small nuclear modular reactors show considerable promise. Yeah, let me know when this beats, solar and wind in the time frame that we have. So yeah, the potential climate benefits from cost-effective nuclear fission or even nuclear fusion, which we still, by the way, haven't figured out, are so large that there were some strategic bets even at long odds. The problem is, my dude, we don't have time for that. Jesus Christ. Some forms of geoengineering, such as carbon dioxide removal, would require massive reductions in cost to be viable as a climate solution. Yeah, no shit. We don't have... So what you're saying is that, like, none of my suggestions that I was just condescendingly shitting on Bernie Sanders for work anyways, and we just don't know. Thanks, dude. Wonderful. Wonderful. Like, this is the kind of stuff that makes my blood boil. It's like unironic publications like this. Nuclear fusion has been 50 years away for the past 50 years. Yeah, like, and whatever. If you figured that out at some point, great. But that's not. We don't have time for that. Some forms of geoengineering, such as carbon dioxide removal, would require massive reductions in cost to be viable as a climate solution. So it's not. Thanks. At the same time, was true of solar and winds decades ago. Okay. This is where we are now. And furthermore, yeah, we should have been developing solar and wind decades ago. Maybe by now it would have been mostly deployed. The government was also able to accelerate the learning curve in those fields by being an early source of demand and reducing the direct cost for consumers. Many progressive environmentalists feel uneasy with technologies that blunt the climate impact of fossil fuels rather than banish them entirely, because it's not addressing the root of the problem. And yet we need such options. Some major industries such as aviation and steel production will be hard to decarbonize. Okay. So what, we shouldn't? What are you talking about? What about the other stuff that we can work on? And we're already likely to overshoot the goal limiting to 1.5. Oh, so we shouldn't do anything. Listen, we already blew it. We might as well just keep going. Choo choo. Fire up that coal train. Let's go. Greater than pre-industrial levels, the only way to permanently reverse that warming will be to suck carbon directly out of the atmosphere. More traditional carbon capture and sequestration methods designed to capture greenhouse gases as they're generated at large pollution sources are showing less promise than carbon dioxide removal, given typically they leave some residual emission, but they're certainly better than unmitigated fossil fuel use. Great, but the fossil fuel is still there. That's the problem. And you're already admitting that the status quo already threw us off the edge. In a variety of other ways, Americans will have to choose between the perfect and the good. What are you talking about? Some environmentalists are skeptical of geothermal energy, which requires extensive drilling. It has high potential as a source of clean baseload power with a small geographical footprint that can, in theory, be deployed anywhere in the world if you drill deep enough. One way to accelerate investment in geothermal energy would be to give this clean technology the same expedite permitting that oil and gas already receive for leases on federal land. Depending on the environmental impact, what's better, what's worse. Also, fusion reactions are way too big and expensive, as Maple said. They're not suitable for efficiently produced energy. I mean, yeah, they can produce it, but they still consume more than their average output. By the way, hello everyone. Howdy. Welcome. Welcome. Yet permitting reform requires loosening regulations and laws that many environmentalists hold dear. Nah. Jim Pandini, thank you for the follow and welcome. Nah, get effed. The National Environmental Policy Act requires a review that gives enormous power to anyone who wants to block or delay a proposed energy project, either out of genuine social concern or for self-interested reasons. In practice, this is a major bottleneck to build clean energy infrastructure. According to an analysis of government data by the R Street Institute, 65% of energy projects categorized as either in progress or planned are related to renewable energy, and 16% have to do with electricity transmission. And nearly 20 times as much offshore and wind is held up in permitting as is currently in operation or under construction. U.S. climate spending could exceed more than $500 billion by the end of this decade, but without permitting reform, those investments wouldn't translate to much physical infrastructure. A new permit reform measure put by the Senator Joe Manchin, yes, here we go, of West Virginia has drawn criticism for fast-tracking some specific fossil fuel projects, such as the controversial Mountain Valley Pipeline, but in general, clean energy infrastructure has much more to gain relative to fossil fuels by streamlining permitting because much of it still needs to be built. I don't trust that. I don't trust that. Nuclear in the U.S. Is unfortunately impracticable at the moment because of the regulation nightmare that were created. But I think, given, I think there's a good reason for that. But furthermore, like I said, by the time you get a lot of these guys up, and more importantly, the cost, we're just like running out of where we can move. None of this means that the U.S. should let the energy market run wild. On the contrary, the federal government will need to use a heavy hand in ensuring technologies like CO2 removal actually deliver on their claims. Unlike carbon offsets, a sketchy market rife with fraud and greenwashing, and a public investment in green technology has already been pivotal in driving down. Public investment has already been pivotal in driving down the cost of solar and wind as well as batteries. Yet we cannot succeed in the fight against global warming without giving many alternatives to the status quo an opportunity to evolve and prove themselves. We don't have time. We don't have time. We have proven technologies that we can deploy now. What's the problem here? What's the holdup? In reality, the false solution to climate change isn't geoengineering or nuclear energy. It's the belief that we can decarbonize the economy only by upending our economic system, categorically rejecting certain technologies, and spurring private investment. But he proved none of that here. He didn't prove any of that in this article. That's supposed to be a pro-climate change article. Private investment won't save us at this point. We need to do 100% full command economy or not get done in time and scale to save the day. I don't know if that's like even necessary either. My point being is that yes, the private sector isn't here to save us. Energy in the near future should be focused on setting up VPPs in cities and ramping up solar and wind and geothermal where practical. The nuclear seems to have died out. It's slow to make, expensive and run, and inflexible. No one seems to willing to invest in it. Right, which is a fundamental problem. Like, is this idea that it needs, private investment. We don't have time for that. We generally don't have time for that. But this is what we get in the media. Garbage like this. If you want to take a look at it yourself and just kind of what is this publication? It's in the Atlantic, I found. At least this article is garbage and incredibly infuriating. I posted it there, so if you want to dissect it. At least you're building a new reactor. I live in Italy, not only when we said no to nuclear, we already had 3 nuclear centrals that were left at the time, the state of the art in terms of safety, efficiency, and technology, but we're still one of the best countries when it comes to nuclear energy and research. Once in a while, the Atlantic has a real good... Yeah. Sometimes they do. I've seen James post some good ones. It's been a 15-year project to make new plants of the old format. There's some hope for modular reactors, though, and commercial viability. Or we could skip that and go with technologies that work. They've been making nuclear modular reactors for years and subs and aircraft, so not new tech, but changing the format for land use. Maybe. It's just like how expensive is that going to end up being versus like we can just be deploying like renewables. And right after elections, politicians basically are saying, yeah, but we could bring back nuclear and reach 85, Green turn down to it. But the smell of coal in the morning, it just feels like victory. But at the same time, they don't want coal burning stations here. Yeah, it's a good meme. You can't have both. But, from what I understand, the new the new prime minister is a pretty much a fascist. So it's an incoherent statement. It's on purpose. All right, folks. Unfortunately, that is all the time I have today. If you guys enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. We're so close to 2,000 followers. It is absolutely amazing that we are on the cusp, folks, on the cusp of reaching 2,000 followers. And you get 5 free emotes, so that's cool. Spread the word far and wide that this is the chillest place to be for the news, for the politics, Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us. It says 2K on my screen. Yeah, I don't know why, like, it rounds up. It's like 1,996 exactly. If you have a moment, also sub to the YouTube channel. It does help. And if you want to keep up with the channel, make sure you hit up the Discord. As always, folks, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I'll be on. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Y'all be chill. Maybe battery tech or energy storage will catch up and allow the replacement of traditional baseload sources sooner than they can scale modular reactors. Maybe. I do know that our battery technology has definitely gotten better. Peace out. Take care. You take care. Thank you, everybody. Hang tight. See ya. All right, folks, we're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See ya.